Has anyone seen my lanyard? Anyone seen my lanyard? I had a speaker's badge. Anyone? Can you have a look under your seats? See if you can find my badge. Somewhere in here is my badge. Whoever finds it wins this.
What's that, Keith?
This is a limited edition Microsoft bag from Ignite that there's only 2 of them in the world. Yeah. And I managed to nick one. Donna wasn't looking.
Let's be honest. Donna.
Yeah, hey, there's my man.
No.
There you go. It came through airport security. Oh, yeah, probably, actually. That was... No, genuinely not. It's probably a good thing. Can't pick me out in a lineup. Actually, you can. It's the ginger one. Good morning. How is everyone? For those of you who were here last night, I'm not speaking German. This is not an Papa band. For those of you who are here this morning, you're wondering what the heck's going on. That's probably a good thing. I wanted to welcome you all to South Coast Summit. I'm just going to leave this over here because it's getting very awkward. I want to welcome you all to South Coast Summit. South Coast Summit version 2.0. Version 2.0. We got some great stuff going on today. Here are our fantastic sponsors. Now, this slide always kind of comes up at the beginning of every presentation, and as it should do. There are a group of people here who put this together. They are the organizers, right? They slaved away. They used a new project management methodology based on Agile with lots of kind of sleepless nights and all sorts of arguments involved. The project management framework's called Fragile. At least that's what their relationships are like now. So we'd like to very much thank them and put your hands together for the organizers this morning. Last night, one of them looked at their watch at 9 o'clock, like literally was just stood there by the door and he went, the band's on in 2 minutes. And I was like, God, dude, man, have a beer, just calm down. He's like, it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine. But these are the sponsors, and these sponsors don't come about just because they want to. People in the community quite often ask them, hey, do you want to sponsor South Coast Summit? And then people have to make a business case and blah, blah, blah. And like they come here, there's stands, there's all sorts of stuff. Now, there's partners up there, there's ISVs up there, there's training providers up there, and you know what? They will solve your problems. When I first came to one of these, I was a bit like, okay, do I really want to go and talk to these people? Go and talk to these people. They will solve your problem. They are your colleagues. They are your collaborators. In this business, we need to work together because if they don't come to us, they will go to a different software development stack, not to another partner, not to another ISV. So for goodness sakes, go and see these fantastic people today. They will help you. Now, on the screen in front of you, you will see a number of logos. And these logos are all different. Every single one of them is unique, a little bit like us. Well, apart from me, because I'm ginger and we're all the same. Everyone says I look like Prince Harry. So identity is a really important thing. Us, we, are all individuals, and we all strive for our identity. And these days, identity is more important than ever. Identity can be a really positive thing. An icon can describe wonderment, but it can also be a horrible thing, like a little white Z on the side of a tank. But there's identities that we know all the time, places we know and love, places like Teams where we all live these days, chatting to one another on this beautiful Teams logo, and it's designed by a designer. And these designers sat there and they had meetings about how it should look, how it should feel, what things it should evoke. In the audience, the software engineers are sitting there going, well, I know that Teams color, it's 255 blue and a little bit of green and a tiny little bit of red. And the UX designers are sitting there going, yeah, but how does that blue make you feel? How does it make you feel? And the UI designers are sitting there going, well, it's not quite straight. So ID is really important. And within this identity, and I do apologize for Microsoft announcing a brand new Microsoft Office logo, is a grouping logo. So they have a brand, right? There's a brand, a little bit like us. We have an identity. There's another identity, Azure. All a little bit cold and chilly. Everything's blue in Azure, right? But there's A is for Azure. You can see I've got kids, A is for Azure. There's some people in the audience who are looking a little bit uncomfortable right now, a little bit fidgety. They're called solution architects. They're just eager to come up here and draw little lines and dot them together and then give them to an IT manager and say, here, listen, it's fine, it's going to work, it'll be okay. And the IT manager goes, oh, thank God for that, because without that picture, I was done. But this identities are really important. A is for Azure. And then we've got Dynamics, right? A bunch of Dynamics people in here, another tribe, another family. And here are some Dynamics icons. Now, you want to pay attention to all these Dynamics icons because they will be in the quiz later, right? I can guarantee you Bibby will be putting these in the quiz later on. How many CRM regions does Janet got? If Janet's got 6 CRM regions and Terry's got 4 CRM regions and you take away these, what is it in Roman numerals? It's genuinely coming later on. And these really describe what they do. If you notice so far, Excel looks like a spreadsheet. Word looks like a document. Outlook looks like an email. This little one on the left-hand side there, the little blue one with the thing, that's warehouse and scanning a barcode, right? The love of customer service. Commerce, for some of us in the community, is a little shopping trolley, right? There's even the leafy one at the top. It's a brand new one, the leafy one. The leafy one is sustainability, right? And in the middle, you've got Dataverse, because remember, Dynamics, big power app. With lots of JavaScript. Did you see little JavaScript sneaking at the end there? Did you see it? Anyway, whoa, there goes the JavaScript. And then, my favorite, obviously, Power Platform, right? And there's a new logo here, a brand new logo. And I was talking to someone at Microsoft, big guy called Nick Dolman, he's a powerlifter, and he was telling us about Power Pages whilst he was lifting a mini. He's like, oh yeah, it's just powerlifting. And I said to Nick, he said, dude, you've got no idea how big a deal it is. He says, this logo, what it means to the team to have an identity, right? Because ADX Studio, portals, this, that, and the other, it was like, man, it's a really big deal. So there's an even bigger deal, right, that happened this year. This, the Power Platform logo, right? Look at the logo. Look where it sits, right? Understand how these logos are put together. These designers came along. Office, what was that? 1990-something, 1996? Dynamics, 2006, according to Nigel Frank. Azure, 2012, according to Wikipedia. You see I've done my research. Bit of Google, consultant's best friend. And Power Platform in 2022. That's a once-in-a-decade event that a new brand, not necessarily logos, they change over time, but a brand, an identity, a product name comes to the fore, okay? So this is a big deal. To get up here means you've arrived. Now, I know there's a bunch of you in the audience who are Modern Workplace, I know a bunch of you are Azure, and a bunch of you are Dynamics, but when one of these things lands, we, as a group of people, as a group of technologists, we're all part of this same family, and we all want to work together. The beauty of Power Platform is it spans all of them. Spans absolutely all of them, right? So this thing, this identity, brings us together. Microsoft crafted that. They craft the platform. But to make a platform, to get up on that screen, to arrive there, is not something Microsoft just throw out. It's not like, here's a thing, we've made this thing and it works. There's a group of people who bring that together, and that's some of you guys, right? People, when they're playing with this stuff, when they're building this stuff, it gets hard because it's serious stuff. The more serious it gets, the more difficult it gets. So you've got people like John Liu, right? Builds Flow Studio. The Flow Studio, he's kind of like hacked all the APIs together in the back end. He's got this thing, so if you've got a load of flows that have failed, you can just easily rerun the flow files without having to stick it in the interface and blah, 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 blah. Power clarity to make governance easier. Then you've got the Power Platform Adoption Framework. Andrew Walsh, Lucy Baum, myself. It's not a plug or anything like that. I just made it look nice. And a few others, bits. Yes, Lee Baker and Manuela Pickler, plus others in the community now contributing towards it because it's open source. Trying to put together the de facto standard for moving forward with governance so it's the same everywhere, so we can have the same conversation, so it's repeatable between companies, so that you can recruit someone into a position and they know what they're talking about on day one because we all do it similarly. Serge Luca, BPM toolkit. So last year, Serge put together this amazing Power Automate toolkit that does all of these awesome approvals. Now Microsoft have got the approval toolkit and the Flow Automation Studio, phenomenal. Sancho Harker, right? I was really hoping Sancho was going to turn up today, but he's not here. Sancho, I have not built a Power App that has not used Sancho's template since 2019. Since 2019. The guy's work for Power Apps, just unbelievable. Check Sancho's I Am Mancat, check Sancho out. It's amazing. Very good friend of ours, Cookie. XRM Toolbox does all of these wicked plugins and bits and pieces and helpers, this thing that turns your flow into documentation so you don't have to be bothered to write it. Mockaroo, filling it up with data. Incredible stuff. They're making the platform mature. Christine, who's speaking later on today, the styling frameworks, right? Absolutely phenomenal work. You wait till you see. Look at this stuff. Incredible, right? That's a Power App because it has to look every good as bit as it works. Christine's an old school developer. She's like full-on C#, hardcore back-end dev, right? But she just needs to make it look good straight away because quality counts. Makers build the platform. Makers build the platform, right? That's you guys. That's all of you. But there's something missing. A platform, it's just technology. It doesn't really change anything until you get people like Samit come along. Tiny, small pebble in a pond. One man, one person, turned up, was humble, shared his story with thousands of people. I was terrified of meeting him. When I was on the buses and Samit was working in Heathrow Airport, I was looking at him, I was like, man, this guy's going to make so many amazing apps, I'm going to look so stupid. And we went to the first conference, and we didn't even make it 2 blocks, because it took us 45 minutes, because we were just talking the whole time. We just couldn't stop. We were like, blah, blah, blah. Oh, have you done this, man? Have you done that? Have you done that? We were all there together, Martin Lee and others. It was just crazy. And from Samit, sharing his vulnerability and being honest and making it okay for everyone to be part of the community, it started to grow. Power Addicts was born, a few other people came along. Louise Fries there, who swore she wasn't a developer. I am not a developer, she said. I am not a developer. I do Office 365 adoption and change transformation. Now she's a dev. Why? Because Power Platform opened the door for her, okay? And the community was there to support her. And then some other maniacs got involved. Chris Huntingford, Penny Coventry, and it grew. And it grew, and it grew. That's the London Power Apps user group down the bottom. Up the top, the Japanese user group, and that's the Power Africa community there in the middle. And just so you know, the guys at the top, they make musical instruments in Power Apps. They've got a Power Apps orchestra, okay? Right? One day, Satya Nadella's going to walk out on stage to Ignite to like Greensleeves played on Power Apps. It's going to be absolutely awesome. But the next thing that happened was even more incredible. So we had some user groups, and we've seen those before, and the next thing you know, because it matters, because social mobility counts, because Samit's story of how you went from here to here and everyone's story of how they moved forward, there was a school. When a community gets to such a certain size, they need things. They need hospitals. They need fire stations. All of a sudden, we've got a school for Power Platform. That is absolutely huge, right? You just can't get any bigger than that. So, and I just, you know, this, for me, is where it matters. Whether you're a Japanese school teacher who's addicted to physics and changes his community, whether you're a Polish Instagram styler whose addiction to quality brings a framework forward, whether you're a tattooed South African who is addicted to bringing people together, whether you're a Jamaican techno whiz kid who is now a headmistress of a school, it doesn't matter who you are. The door's open for you to come, okay? We're delivering social mobility with things like Power Platform School. Check it out. Talk to the kids. I say kids, they're 20. They're on it. Brian Dang, who you may or may not know, he's a guy who works for Microsoft. He used to be a school teacher in a school. Brian's an incredible guy. He comes from literally nothing. And he's working at Microsoft now. And he says it's one thing to be part of a community. It's quite another thing to be part of a movement, and we are that movement. Satya talks about tech intensity. That's us. He talks about the digital imperative. That's what we do it is imperative to all of us that we change the world with technology, regardless of which one of those 4 icons you're aligned to. We, our community, creates, right? And on the subject of creation, I'm going to give it up to Ryan Cunningham in a minute. And when I first started here, and on my first conference when I met Samit when I was on the buses, I saw Ryan speak, and it blew me away. So you guys are in for a treat. Like, he's who I modeled myself on speaking from the beginning. And I'm up here giving a keynote here, having never spoken in front of public before, used to drive a bus. Our community, our platform, creates jobs that create careers, that change lives, that give back to others. That is a digital feedback loop. Today, I'd like you all to do 1 or 2 things. I'd like you to be a Brian. I'd like you to be a Samit. I'd like you to be all of those people. I'd like you to be you, and I want you to be the people sat next to you. I want you to go off and learn today, right? Go and absorb the information with the same grit and determination that got you through all that syntax error, syntax error, syntax error. Oh, God, it works, yes, right? I want you to get through all of that. But then I want you to do the second thing that you've always done. Be part of the community. Open your hearts and minds to one another. Talk to the people next to you. Make new friends. Make new colleagues. It will shape you and it will change the world. Next thing you know, we'll have Power Platform hospitals for people whose apps are broken. All of mine. I'm really bad at doing them. But driven by that grit and determination, you'll be fine. And that is how a bus driver builds an app that delivers a keynote. That is Microsoft. That is our community. That is social mobility. The only question is, who's next? Thank you very much.
That was fantastic. Whew. I'm next, and that's a tough act to follow. Thank you, Keith. Hey, folks who are hanging out on the outside, don't be afraid. We don't bite. There's a bunch of seats up here, some on the side. If you want to come in, get cozy. We might be here a while. They gave me a microphone and a clicker, so Lord knows how long this will take. I promise. Probably only about half an hour before Aaron kicks me out. So we're going to talk about a lot of things today. I want to talk about roadmap, where we're going with the platform, how to think about it, how to talk to your boss about Power Platform, all of that. But I want to start where Keith left off. As somebody who spends a lot of time building this platform. For those of us who haven't had a chance to meet yet, I've been working on Power Apps since before it had a space in the name. Really, since before it was called Power Apps. Back when nobody believed that this kind of thing was possible. And the thing that has kept us going, that keeps us working on this every day and every night is this community. And it's one thing to know that people are using software academically to look at a chart and telemetry and whatnot, but it's a whole other thing to know that people are building entire lives and careers and changing the world around them based on it. And in our team, like many software teams, we think about design, we think about users, we think about personas, but what's much more powerful is we know people by name. We talk about, gosh, Christine is completely outclassing our user experience. We got to make it better. Keith really wants that flow box to be bigger. Gosh, what's wrong with him? And those things drive change in the product, and those things build a better platform. And we are building this together, and we have built it together over the last several years, and we will build it together over the next several decades, and that's the way that we're really looking at this. But there's something really special about this community. There's a lot of software communities. This community is not just using tools. This community is changing the way the world works. And that's very, a literal statement. Every time you automate a process, every time you build an application, every time you make, something run a little better or a little faster, you are making life better for your colleagues and coworkers and the people that they serve. And that's a massive responsibility, and that's a massive honor. There's a lot of windowless rooms that people gather in to talk about technology and their business, but very few of them have people that are silently overthrowing all of their organizations every single day for the better. And that's pretty powerful. That's a pretty special thing to be a part of. And speaking of sort of silently overthrowing the world, what we're participating here is making a massive change in the industry. if you believe Gartner, even if you half believe Gartner, they predict that 70% of new software in enterprise will be created on a low-code platform in just the next 3 years. That is a staggering amount of change. And a lot of people look at that from the outside and get terrified. And they're not ready for it, right? Either they're terrified because it threatens what they know traditionally, or they're challenged because they don't trust it because it's new technology. To pay off my title slide here, How I Stopped Worrying and Learned to Love Low Code, that is obviously a reference to the subtitle of Stanley Kubrick's greatest film, Dr. Strangelove. Any Kubrick fans in the audience, or is that too obscure? Yeah, all right. This is the classic image, iconic image from that film of Slim Pickens riding a atom bomb out of a plane. But the film is a story of misconceptions, right, and misunderstandings, right? And there's a lot of that swirling around low code right now. And a lot of people look at this from the outside and think, gosh, are we ready for this as a society and as a technology community? But guess what? We got to be ready for it, because already there's 7.5 million people building low-code things in Power Platform every single month. That's a sizable chunk of all software development happening on the planet already right now. By some counts, there are only about 24 million people that write JavaScript. And this number is growing a lot faster. Right? So the community you're a part of is changing the way the world works and changing the way that we implement that and the way that we think about that. And that requires us to think at a much higher level. And from a Microsoft perspective, this is not a thing on the side. This is actually something really in the middle of what we do. This company has been around for, almost 5 decades at this point, which is terrifying. And we've been good at about 2 things in that whole time period. We've been good at making regular people more productive in their day jobs. That's this deep history of Office and Excel spreadsheets and now Teams and modern work and whatever else that means. But we also have been making software engineers more productive through that whole time frame. And that's that deep history of .NET and Visual Studio and through to Azure and GitHub and everything around it. And Power Platform is very literally the union of those 2 missions. And that's not just a nice thing to say on a stage, it's literally how we're building it. We're building it as an abstraction layer over many of these underlying components and pieces of Azure, putting it together in prepackaged bits and making it easier to then distribute through the tools that hundreds of millions of people are using every day for their day jobs. It's just a button in SharePoint. It's a tab in Teams. And so this is really a bringing together of many of these communities and a bringing together of many of these ways of working. And that's interesting from a technology perspective, but to Keith's point, the tech is just the means to the end. The interesting part is what people are actually doing with it, and there's amazing stories of that happening all around this room and all around the world. One that I love because it represents a lot of these things coming together is from a different island in the Commonwealth, from here in Australia. And this is a little bit of an old story, but it's one that I love for a lot of reasons, and I'm not even going to try to tell it to you. I'll let Jackie tell it in her own words.
I go out to remote and regional communities all over Australia and provide hearing assessments and training to Aboriginal communities to close the gap for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children who have high rates of middle ear disease. And so my role in the HAPPY program, which is an acronym for the Hearing Assessment Program Early Years, which is run by Hearing Australia, is to go out into the Aboriginal communities and provide hearing assessments and training to the Aboriginal community.
So Hearing Australia is the largest Australian government-funded hearing aid dispensing company, providing hearing care and technologies.
So I was really motivated to bring my team together around a better way of working. And so what I found was the information I was getting was often in a fragmented form. So they're gathering a lot of the information and having to disseminate it a lot, not just to the audiologist, but to the other stakeholders involved in the program. And that's where I came across Microsoft Power Apps, and it really ticked all the boxes.
At the end of 2019, I started working on Power Apps and Power Platform. Over there, I started to automate much of the manual processes we have in Hearing Australia using Power Apps and Power Automate.
So obviously, I have no IT experience. I didn't even know how to put a table in Excel, and you need that basic skill in order to create a Canvas app. And so really I relied heavily on Uma for technical knowledge.
So I started to learn about what are the happy pain points. So the major one was, as Jackie mentioned, the data was scattered, right? So she was using Excel to, and as a data source for Canvas apps. So I told her that it would be better off if she could, use CDS, which will open a new world to her.
Picking up model-driven apps and Canvas apps, Microsoft has done a fantastic job on education and created a software system that is really intuitive and easy to use. But the part that I really needed help with was how IT systems work. I had no idea that my solution was going to need to be tested. I didn't know what a user story was or what a deployment pipeline was. And so that's where I really relied on Uma to sort of teach me and guide me and do all of the background work necessary in order to make an application the size of the one that I've built for Happy successful.
Jackie is doing is at the ground, right? So she knows what's about the business in and out. So she came in helping out in regards to doing creating entities and tables and fields, those kind of stuff, which are very labor intensive. So that's where Jackie helped me in that sense. So what I was able to do more was, put in more effort in the architecture point of view.
So one of the reasons why the Happy app is so successful is because we're really getting the most we can out of the few developers that we have. And so because I'm so close to the business and I am one of the users of the application, it means that I can build something and then Uma can come in and use his expertise to really sprinkle the magic of code first development where and if needed. Happy is now grown to the size of a small business. We have over 100 people working on our team all over Australia, and connecting all of our information through the model-driven app just means that we can continue to grow and evolve as a program. And my favorite thing is that as an audiologist, I can now be out in the community with no internet and find the most up-to-date information on my phone offline. It was a game changer.
That's changing the way the world works. That's pretty cool. And the part about it is it's not the tech. It's not, there's no novel software being created there. It's all business applications, and we've been able to create those for decades as an industry. But that one never would have happened. That one would have continued to have been what it was before: spreadsheets, phone calls, emails, process. Because what changed there was not technology. What changed was humans coming together. There's no human more qualified to say what makes the life of somebody delivering a hearing assessment in a remote community in Australia better than somebody who has expertise in that process. That's Jackie, right? And being able to pick up skills and start working with it and then get help from an organization. Have people with a little bit more software development background come in and say, how can we help? How can we work together? And have that be mutually helpful. That's really transformative for that process and for hundreds and thousands and millions of others like it around the world right now. If you talk to the CIO of this organization, they're thrilled about it. They're not scared of citizen development. They're not scared of app sprawl and governance. This is making the organization better, faster, stronger, and is doing it in a way that everybody's thrilled about. They're heroes. They love this, right? And so that's really the change that's happening here around this technology. We got to rethink the gap around expertise. And since we're in the UK, we'll mind the gap, right? But this is the real gap we've got to talk about, right? It's the gap between what it means to be good at a job, right? What it means to be good at financial analysis or hearing assessment or maintenance operations. And there are so many different versions of this in the world today. We can't make all these people software engineers. We still need people to assess hearing and analyze finances and operate machinery and all of the other things that happen in the world, right? And as a technology industry, we've kind of gotten that backwards for the last several decades, right? We've assumed we need to make everybody like us. And that's just wrong, right? And it's not very practical, and frankly, we're not doing very well at it. Decades and decades of, getting more tech and software education into schools has not actually produced that many more software engineers, and there's still a massive, massive gap. And so the gap is maybe not so much we need everybody to learn .NET, right? Maybe the gap is a little bit more we need to bring technology to people and actually get closer to where expertise inside of these organizations already is, right? We need to empower every worker to be able to do more and make their lives better. And that includes workers with software backgrounds to be more productive and be more helpful, but it includes people who also understand what it means to do all these jobs. We've spent so much time in the technology industry for the last several decades inventing all this stuff that is not software, that is process, right? Because we're trying to take all the expertise out of the head of a frontline audiologist and put it in the head of a software engineer and hope that the right thing comes out the other side. A big part of what's slow and expensive about software is not software at all, right? It's translating between what humans need to be better and how to give a computer instructions. And that has traditionally been a very complicated and expensive process, and that's what's changing with low code. That's why this is so exciting, right? And that's why we're really investing in bringing these skills to a lot more people. That's why we announced a massive power-up program just a few weeks ago to do intensive multi-week training for anybody who wants it. And guess what? 60,000 people signed up in the first 10 minutes or something, and now we're shockingly under ready to handle that volume because the demand is there. We thought maybe 500 people or something. It was ooh, okay. Right, but that's why we're bringing it into product as well. That's why we're in product. This is brand new stuff as well, matching people with each other inside a company so that the Jackies of the world can find the Farouks of the world inside of their organizations already, right? And that we can get help even from non-humans inside of the product too, right? Just helping people as they go in their journey is a big part of where we're going from here. But guess what? This whole thing, this whole conversation is not new. And here's the next reference to this title. This is the first column that Walt Mossberg ever wrote in the Wall Street Journal. For those who follow personal tech, Walt Mossberg wrote for decades about personal tech. And the first column was how to stop worrying and get the most from your computer. And the first line was, computers are too hard, and it's not your fault. Guess what? He wrote that 30 years, 363 days ago, and it's still true. We have not done enough as an industry to really bring the power of what technology represents to more people and to everybody. We've made a lot of people feel excluded in the process, and that's what we really need to change, right? And we think about this, this concept of low code has been around for that entire history. At the time Walt wrote that column, Excel was a thing. Visual Basic in it was a thing. Lotus Notes was a thing. Access databases were a thing. They're still a thing, right? But we think about that sort of as the 1.0 generation of low code. My boss, Charles Lamanna, loves to tell the story of the customer who told him, son, I've been talking about low code longer than you've been alive. Which is true, right? Because as long as we've had software, we've had people working around the boundaries of their software to get their job done. But guess what? There were a lot of challenges to low code 1.0. I mean, this predated not just Charles, but also the internet and the cloud for a lot of people, right? And it happened on desktops, under people's desks, right? And so things were literally disaggregated and siloed. It was impossible to govern what people did in these environments, and it still is in a lot of ways for files. Right, so that gave rise in the 2000s, in the era of sort of mass internet and cloud innovation, to a whole proliferation of individual point solutions to help people get their jobs done faster. I mean, you've got dozens of companies just doing RPA, dozens of companies just doing low-code business intelligence, dozens of companies doing automation in various forms, dozens of people innovating around CRM systems or ERP systems or ITSM systems, and all of that is great for those individual leaf nodes. But it doesn't actually help connect, right? It actually exacerbates this fragmentation problem. And that's really where we see a significant generational shift in low code happening right now that Power Platform represents. And we think about this as sort of the third wave or the third generation of low code. I call it low code 3.0, and that's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek joke about crypto bros and NFTs. I promise there are none of those involved in this version of low code. So what is it about? Well, it's about a lot of stuff, and we can talk about a lot, but I don't have that much time, so I'm going to focus on 3 aspects of what's different now with low code. And the first is actually about trust. If the world of 1.0 was about fragmented files, and the world of 2.0 is really about this huge proliferation of individual SaaS products that IT people think of as shadow IT, the 3.0 world is really a world of trust and of central management. And I think this is a world that a lot of people are waking up to. How many people have had a conversation with somebody in your organization that's a little skeptical of this low-code thing? A little worried about governance, maybe? Has that word come up from time to time? Yeah. That's a big conversation that's completely changing right now. Because a lot of people are looking at this. On the one hand, you can pull up a report in the admin center and say, oh my goodness, there are 2,337 apps that are being actively used and 525 people that made them. That's shocking. That's terrifying. I've actually had a customer tell me, you're giving all of my children nuclear weapons and sending them into the backyard unsupervised. Are you crazy? I say, yeah. Because there are 525 people in your company that are trying to make it better right now, that you did not hire as software developers, that have expertise about your business. And you know who every single one of them is. You know what they built yesterday. You know what it connects to. You know how many times it was launched and how many errors were fired and how many milliseconds it took. And all of that is programmatizable. That is so much more control and trust than business as usual. Where do you think those 2,337 apps came from? They didn't come out of thin air. It wasn't like those people woke up on Tuesday and decided to invent Flappy Bird for business, for fun, all at once. These were all existing processes in the company. You just couldn't see them before. They looked like files. They looked like activity because they were. But now you have so much more opportunity to make them bigger and make them better. That's why we're investing in this from a central perspective. That's why we're innovating a lot in the roadmap around the actual features of managed environments, making it easier to get central visibility and more control with less effort than stitching together individual components, because this is a net trust benefit for a lot of organizations, not a weakness. And that's a big shift in conversation and thinking that we need to drive. And then obviously we need to drive the conversation around who participates, right? And if the 1.0 era was about amateurs and tinkerers and Excel spreadsheets, and the 2.0 era was about siloed specialties and people building up expertise just in one technology capability, the 3.0 era is really about bringing a lot of those different humans together around a table. We got a lot of cheesy words for that in tech. Gartner calls this fusion teams. But the truth is, it's happening, right? That video of Jackie and Hearing Australia is not a one-off. There are organizations all over the world that are combining people that come from software backgrounds, people that come from business backgrounds into one group and one team, and they're doing amazing things together. And again, that's why we're investing heavily in things like co-authoring, making it possible to work on the same app with more than one person at a time. That's shocking, right? People have been asking for that for a long time. This is actually a really hard problem. Technically speaking, right? It's one thing to work on the same Word document at once, but an app that's constantly recompiling with thousands and thousands of different combinations of variables to be able to make this happen, that's revolutionary even for software developers. Most software developers today work in a very single-player way. They check out code from a main branch. They work on it on their local device. They merge it back in, and then sometime later they figure out that it all doesn't work together, and then they have to go back and start over again. To be able to work on the same thing all at once is a big deal. And that's actually enabling a new way of working for even really very sophisticated use cases and applications. There's a team at Xiaomi that maintains a suite of 15 Power Apps that are used by more than 30,000 frontline workers in 90 different cities around the world. For their day jobs every single day. You can go walk into a Xiaomi retail location to buy a mobile phone anywhere from Singapore to Senegal, and you can see employees using these applications. And they're building on Power Platform. They're building on Power Platform because Power Platform is built on Azure. And they're doing it because it makes them much faster to get to market. They can iterate much more quickly, but also they're getting all the compliance benefit of being built on that large cloud. Right? So this is not just tinkerers, right? This is people who are really changing the way they go to market and do business with software because of what's possible with the tech. And then the third big thing that's changing, at least the third one we'll talk about today, is the participants in this are human, but also increasingly machines. And I want to talk a little bit and demystify a little bit the future of AI and why we're spending so much time on it. And this is personally for Keith, who in the back, right before we got up, was like, why are you doing all these AI features? I just want the flow box to be bigger. So I whipped these slides up in 5 minutes. No, I'm just kidding. Here's why. We are also on the cusp of a generational shift in what artificial intelligence can do. And we are on the cusp of an era of collaboration where some of the collaborators are not humans but are machines as well. And for those of you in the software development community, you may have followed or even tried out Copilot for GitHub, which works on one of the largest large language models on the planet, GPT-3, which Microsoft has an exclusive partnership to use with the OpenAI Foundation. That anticipates the code you're going to write and writes it for you based on the natural language input that you're typing into Visual Studio. Guess what? The same thing works in Power Apps. And actually already today, I can build a Power App end to end and have an AI assistant help me all the way through. In fact, I can even start by just showing Power Apps a picture of what I want to end up with, a sketch. Upload a file of an image of an application, and Power Apps will look at that application and realize, you know what? A lot of business apps look the same. It's actually pretty easy to understand. That is a text label. That's a text input. That's a drop-down. That implies a data structure behind the scenes. And I, as a maker, can interact with that back and forth. I can say, no, you're wrong, AI. I wanted that to be a drop-down, or I want this to be a radio button. I didn't want that to be a text field. I wanted it to be a number. And you have an interaction with that intelligence as you build your application. And that follows you all the way through. Today in Power Apps, as I'm building an app, I can go in and say, hey, I want to just give you an example of how I want this date formatted. And that same large language model will go understand what we think you mean and suggest an expression. Or I want to give you an example of a conditional format. Highlight only things where there's an allergy populated in this allergy field because I want that to pop out on a mobile phone screen for somebody working at a banquet. But gosh, writing that PowerFX expression, that's like an hour of reading Greg Lindhorst blogs today. So let me just tell you what I want, and PowerFX will anticipate it, right? That's already happening right now. And just last week, we announced the ability to do this for Power Automate as well. Just describe what you want to automate in natural language, and we will generate and suggest flow templates for you based on that language. And so this is happening now. This is happening today, and these things are becoming already tens of thousands of makers every month are using some of those things inside of Power Apps and being more successful at their app development because of it. So where is this going from here, right? And why are we working on it right now? It's because the tech underneath the covers is making it possible, and that's changing really rapidly. Has anybody played with DALL-E or heard about DALL-E? Yeah. So DALL-E is another really interesting example of how quickly AI is changing in the space. DALL-E is a stable diffusion model that takes natural language input and generates novel images automatically, completely by itself. So you can type into a box and DALL-E will give you an image. And already that is starting to disrupt the stock photography business, right? Because why pay royalties to Getty when I can, for something that anybody else could use, when I can get something completely bespoke and exactly what I want on demand in a few seconds, right? And okay, that's great for static images, but you can extrapolate that out. Why not do that for automation? Why not do that for app development? Why not do that for all the other things that we're talking about here? Now, I know there's a lot of skeptics in the audience because I'm a skeptic too. And I have said this publicly before, but AI is probably the biggest overpromise in technology since jetpacks. I'm still waiting for my jetpack, and I want it. And so I know there's a healthy amount of skepticism. I mean, anybody who has tried to have a real conversation with Siri in the last 10 years shares this skepticism, right? But the underlying technology is changing really quickly. This image and every other image in this presentation was generated by DALL-E by me last night typing a couple sentences into a box. So it's happening, right? It's coming along. And I think we need to be ready for it and part of it. And you can look at that as a cynic. You can look at that as a skeptic. You can say, AI is going to take our jobs, or AI is going to put us out of something, or it's not really going to work. I don't look at it that way. For this, for even just putting, images in a presentation or generating an application or finding a PowerFX expression, I'm the creator. You're the creator. The creativity, the expertise is in what we need to have come out the other side. The technology just goes into a better way to give instructions to a computer. Right? And that's really the mission here, right? That's really the big picture. At some level, the best possible programming language on the planet is natural language. Right? It's just knowing and understanding and thinking through what needs to be better. And that really is the macro mission for all of us with low code. And I would say, for me, that's also deeply personal. I think like a lot of people in this room today, I got here accidentally too. If you had asked me more than 15 years ago when I was a starving graduate student in London, if I would end up at a business software conference talking about business software for building business software, I would have laughed at you. Right? But we're all here because we solve problems. And solving problems and making the world around us better leads us in weird and strange paths and strange ways. And when I got to Microsoft, people didn't really know what to do with me. And they asked me this question that I found really weird and offensive at first, which was, are you technical? Like that was a binary state of being, right? Or sometimes the softer version of this was, how technical are you? I don't know, 7? Like, how are you supposed to answer that? It is not the question. That is not the question to ask, right? Because that is very one-sided view of expertise. And I think what we're really changing here as a community and as a product is we are all developers. Drop all the modifiers. I don't want to hear about citizens or professionals or anything like that. We are all developers who are making the world better and are finding a better way to work. And whether you've been writing .NET code for 30 years or whether this is your first time you're showing up, for everybody, the most elegant solution is when we don't let one particular technology get in the way of making the world a better place to work in. Right? And the most effective and possible effective community we can live in is one where code is not the thing that holds us back. And that's why we say less code. Not no code, but less code. More power. And so I'm honored to be a part of that movement with all of you. I'm honored to be here today, and I will be here all day today. I would love to meet everybody that I can and hear your stories and share mine too. But in the meantime, thank you for coming out. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this movement. And get out of here. Come on, there's a great session. So apparently you're supposed to leave and walk all the way around the pitch. The rest of the conference is on the other side, and sessions start in about 10 minutes. We'll see you out there.